Morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? All good? I'm very impressed, by the way. It's first session of the day, and you've managed to find this area. You've already got your coffees, I imagine. So hello, I'm Chris Hampton. I'm one of the product specialists at Holden. My background's sort of in live streaming and in-house studio work, mainly in corporate side of things. And I'm joined on stage with Alex Pettit for the next 30 or 40 minutes to talk about creating broadcast quality live streams for social. Now, this is going to be a really informal chat. We're just going to talk about some of the projects that he's worked on and his approach, his kit choices to making those projects happen. And of course, there'll be time for Q&A with you guys at the end. So if you do have like a burning question, at any point, just make a mental note, and we will get to you at the end of the session. So I think as a starting point, Alex, it might be good to, if you could just sort of share your background and how you sort of got into your live streaming journey, really.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, as Chris said, to the morning session. So my background in this area actually started at university. I went to Kent University, and while I was there, helped co-found the university television station. And my job there was like technical manager. That's where I discovered sort of Blackmagic kit and how you can start to build these broadcast systems. And I remember the first event we did was a charity event, and there was just this whole camaraderie about doing, it was called Awake for 48, and we did a 48-hour non-stop broadcast.
Wow.
And from that moment onwards, from the end of the 48 hours, I was completely hooked on broadcast. And I then went from uni to work with a social media and production agency, working on shows like BBC Free Speech, which was a great one, mixing live Twitter data with television, and then did online streaming projects for brands such as Hewlett-Packard, Nike, and many others along the way. And then kind of from there, went on my own, started my company, alex.live, and we've been doing multiple stuff with brands like Red Bull, Formula E, live streams for the FA. We did the England World Cup this year. And just been engrossed in social live streaming ever since. It's been fantastic, but I know one of the big ones that we're going to talk about, we'll watch a video in a second, is a live stream show that I'm technical consultant for called The Kickoff. And that is a weekly Premier League football show. And we call it kind of a match companion or a watch-along. It is made for a YouTube audience. We don't care about swearing. It's very, very
I think
raw.
that's clear.
Yeah. Every time you heard audio silence was an F-bomb dropped. It's made for that young generation. There is absolutely no filter. Anything goes on the show. And as you'll see from like some of the shots in there, the whole idea of it is we want it to feel a little guerrilla style. As you're around the table with your mates, you saw from some of the camera angles there, we literally will get a camera as close as this so that you feel like you're in the shot and sitting around the table with the lads. That's the kickoff. I know we're going to talk about that quite a bit when we talk about the kit and things like that.
And just so people have an idea as to sort of the engagement you get with this show, can you tell us a bit of, the high-level stats, what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're now into season 3. So we started this just over 2 years ago. So it's done on a YouTube channel called True Geordie. Big YouTuber. Basically, he does a fantastic podcast interviewing guests, some of the biggest stars and internet celebrities as well around the world. He's just done this week 3 great podcasts, one with Eddie Hearn, the boxing promoter, and then obviously in the YouTube world, there's the big fight this weekend against Logan Paul and KSI, and he's just released 2 podcasts on those as well. Each one of those have now surpassed 1 million views each. So when it's on his channel, he's got 1.7 million subscribers. When we first started this, he had 400,000 subscribers. So that growth in 2 years has been huge, and the kickoff has definitely been a contributing factor to that. In terms of average views, the live stream itself, if you look at the last 5 live streams, gets around 500,000 views each.
Wow.
And then in terms of all the kickoff content, we get around about weekly views of 1.7 million, I think. So that's all the clips, all the social around the show. It very much is a brand.
Yeah. I think before we move into kit, just so we've got a better idea of how you've sort of got to where you are with your kit choices, maybe it's a good idea to talk about how did this project come about? How did you get involved?
Yeah, so I was brought in from a very early stage. So True Geordie and Lawrence, who are a fantastic combo, came up with the idea along with Labrooks as a partner. They then took it to a production company called Formidable, and I've worked with the guys at Formidable a couple of times in the past and on live projects, and they brought me in as a technical and live consultant to make it happen. It was quite an interesting one, as I mentioned to Chris earlier, where the guy at Formidable, Pete, lovely guy, rang me up and said, "We've got this idea, is it possible?" And he told me everything. There's quite a lot of technicals involved in the show. You'll see, for example, like one of them, we have this live data feed coming from the Premier League, which we can visualize where the players are on screen. And back 2 years ago, this was quite new. So he basically tells me everything that needs to be done. And I'm like, yeah, technically it's possible. He goes, well, the first show's in 2 weeks' time. I was like, okay. And I was sitting in an airport lounge at the time. But we did it. We pulled it together. The first few shows were done in a boardroom at the production company's office with some, and we'll talk more about kit, but very basic Blackmagic kit, 'cause we've got a great relationship with them. And we pulled it all together and hacked it all together, but then have very much scaled into where we are now, season 3, with a fantastic kit and location as well.
Yeah. So what sort of kit did you have in the initial, let's say the pilot?
Yeah, so we had the ATEM Television Studio Pro. So that's kind of like the all-in-one. You've got the control surface and then the outputs and the inputs on the back.
Yeah.
And we very quickly found our limitations with that. So as I mentioned, we had this incredible statistics screen and this visualization screen. And the guys decided that what they wanted to essentially do is have a picture-in-picture where you could see the studio, a box-in-box really, see the studio large, but then or see the stats large, but then you can still see the studio small in the box in the corner.
Yeah.
And with that particular model, you just couldn't do it, or how we needed to do it. So just to give an example, one of the things we did is we realized that by using sort of the T-bar and the DVE, if we stuck a little bit of blue tack just before where the T-bar finished, we could get that look where it sort of like zooms down into the corner but doesn't go all the way, and then we could zoom it back up by moving the T-bar.
So I think that's best practice in broadcast.
Definitely not best practice, and I think Blackmagic weren't too happy when we returned the desk to them and there was just blue tack residue all over the T-bar. But those were the sorts of things that we needed to do in the very early stages to make the kit fit our needs.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were using those, and then the Blackmagic studio cameras with the giant screen, which were great for what we needed.
Yep.
Just 3 of those. So it was a 3-camera shoot. Everything was shot in this meeting room and live streamed directly out there to YouTube. Then, I mean, when we look at what we have now, we're in a brand new studio, or flat, I should say, which we've transformed into a studio.
Which was the one we just seen.
Yeah, so this is the one that you've just seen. We've actually gone through 4 different locations, because True Geordie is the type of character where there's never a comfy seat. So we'll do something, we'll do it good, and then it'll say, how can we do it better, and how can we move on to the next thing? Which is great, because for us, we can sometimes get a bit complacent, especially when there's very little competition out there, and we are so ahead of all the other competition. But he's always striving us to do more, which is great. So yeah, the studio now we run everything off of an ATEM 4ME, which just has every capability that we could possibly need. We've got various video matrices and things like that, because I think we have a total of something like 50 outputs and 40 inputs. Wow. Running through the studio.
So you're still fully Blackmagic at the moment then?
Yeah, like 90% of the kit we use, I say, is Blackmagic kit. We've tried to build, as they were with us at the start, we've tried to build everything and on top of them. And the great thing is, like, some of the kit that we used from day one, we're still using today. It's such a modular system with Blackmagic, where you can start with a relatively small setup and then just keep adding things on to get to where you are now. It's not the fact that you've got to say, I've made this huge or I've made this small investment, but I've got to get rid of that and then make a big investment. You can just keep adding things on and then replace things over time. So the main crux of it is a 4ME broadcast panel and various multi-views and things bolted on, numbers of converters. I can't tell you how many HDMI and SDI converters are in there as well, but Yeah, it's all built around the Blackmagic systems.
And how many cameras are you running at the moment?
So that particular studio has a total of 9 cameras. So we have 6 Ursa Mini Pros. We made a kind of content decision that we wanted every guest to have a single that we could cut to, so a locked off single that we could cut to at any one time. So 5 locked off, so we only ever have 5 guests at once. One of the Ursa Mini Pros is on an easy rig, and it's roaming around, so they're getting those nice shots, those gorilla shots of being at the table and things like that. And I will say that is all manned. Everything is all manned by one camera guy. So he has the easy rig on, and then...
But not an easy job.
No, he earns his keep. He definitely earns his keep. So he has the easy rig on, but we're also shouting in his ears, just saying, check headroom on camera 1, check focus on camera 3, whatever it may be throughout the show. But the other cameras are predominantly locked off. And then there's 3 micro studio cameras as well. So we have one on a brilliant slider, syrup slider, which kind of goes around. And then we've got some mounted high as well, because as you can imagine in football, some of the guests are somewhat animated. So we can't rely on those locked off shots for them to stay in one place. So we've got a few safeties as well.
Yeah.
And then there's cameras you don't see. We've got some in the gallery, because we're all about breaking down that fourth wall. So we have no issue. The gallery is fully wired up so that if the studio wants to talk to us, we can bring ourselves on air, both visually and audio as well. And we also have the ability to go anywhere in the flat. So, we've had times where we've followed guests in from the front door and gone into various bedrooms and things like that, and then gone into the lounge. So it's all wired up and capable.
I suppose the beauty of using the ATEM system as well, with these cameras in particular, is that you can control all of their color profiles, etc., remotely from within the ATEM. Is that something that you're using?
We use a lot. We don't have the panel. We do everything software. So we have a 1ME control surface for actually cutting, but we don't have the CCU panel.
Yeah.
So we use for the color correction everything software. And although the great thing about Blackmagic is we've got to the point now where we've been able to fully color calibrate all the cameras and get the look that we want. And now our director Ian gets in the morning, turns it on, just hits restore and does a restore panel. And as long as all of the cameras are plugged in, that restore goes directly to every camera and sets it just how we had for the last show. Yeah. So it means that we're not having to set up. And he'll tweak, the lighting will change and things like that. So we'll constantly be making tweaks. But even during the show, it means that we don't have to say to our camera guy, Rovan, who's already running around like a blue-ass fly, can you do this and that to the color? We're able to do that in the gallery and see all the cameras on the screen next to each other and make those tweaks a lot easier. Same with the focus. If we really want to, we can change the focus. And on some of the cameras, we've got zoom lenses as well. We can even change the zoom in the gallery compared to, we don't have to bother him. So that really helps as well.
Yeah, and we were talking before about your experimenting bringing in remote presenters using Skype.
Yeah.
And you're actually using a product that wasn't designed to be used for that. It's the Blackmagic Web Presenter. Can you just explain how you're doing that?
I mean, my ethos with anything that I do in broadcasting is there'll be a thing on the box where it says this product can do this. But I'm like, well, what else can it do? How can I push it even more?
Yeah.
So we got the web presenter, and I remember getting it, and it goes up to 720p, but all our broadcasting is in 1080p. So I was like, no, I'm not going to use it to stream, but I'm sure I can use it to do something else. So we had the ask from True Geordie, for the boxing match actually this weekend, we want to bring in some guests from LA. So we want to bring in Logan's team, we want to bring in KSI's team. So what we're doing with the web presenter is using that to actually give a return feed back to the guest. And we're able to select what that return feed is, and the director is actually able to cut that feed up live while he's directing the show as well. So by using the super source in the ATEM, we've actually generated a really nice layout where for this weekend we've got one team in one box on the left hand side, and then underneath we've got the second box, and we're bringing those 2 feeds in via Skype, and then we've got the main studio in a third box. And what we're returning to them is a full mix minus of the audio, so they don't hear themselves back and get that annoying echo. They can hear the other team, so I'm sure we'll have some banter and some words thrown between them. And they can see exactly what's going on in the studio and what shot is cut up, but they'll never see themselves. So that you don't get that annoying effect of when the program, when the viewer is seeing the picture-in-picture or the super source layout, you don't see that at home, so you never. You don't see that as a guest, so you never get that back.
Yeah.
And the web presenters allowed us to do that because we can select exactly what we send to the web presenter, and then the web presenter sends that over the USB to Skype. So that's been a great tool for us.
It sounds like you do quite a lot of customization. I mean, anyone who's watched any of these shows, you can watch the recorded versions now if you go onto the channel. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of graphics, live graphics as well going on. I think anyone who's buying a Blackmagic ATEM, you take it out the box and you'll notice you've got a clip store, a still store. Mm-hmm. Can you sort of explain how you go from that to then having all of these live data streams coming in, all these graphics coming out?
I mean, the Blackmagic, again, whether you get a basic ATEM television studio, even, Blackmagic have just announced the ATEM Mini. It's an incredibly powerful device at £250. I've had the luck to be able to try one and do a demo on one and some basic videos on it, and it's an incredibly powerful device in such a small size as well. So they've always given you the tools that you need to go live and do basic broadcasting and very complex broadcasting as well, but of course you can always push it with third-party tools. So I think in terms of the still store you mentioned, although you can use graphics in the ATEM, we only use that really for the end card. Everything else is all done over a cloud graphics system, which is great for us because in the studio, the way that we've particularly designed the Kickoff Studio is everything can be controlled by anyone, anywhere. So all of the Blackmagic kit is networked up. All of our audio kit, which is Behringer, is networked up. And at any one point, whether it be me, the director, the producer, can jump in and change audio levels, lighting levels. They can vision mix the show. One of the main presenters on the show, Lawrence, has an iPad. If he wants to, he can turn down the in-ear monitors for all of the guests. He can even take over from the director and vision mix the show. And we've really made a conscious effort to do that so that we're basically hot desking. If something needs to be done and my hands are full, someone else can do it. I don't have to jump out the way and there isn't this mess. And it's the same with the graphics. So the graphics is cloud-based. It's just someone sat there triggering the graphics on a laptop. It's actually our producer, Adam, who's doing 100 different things at once. We should mention, in terms of the number of people that are involved to produce this show, in the gallery there is 3 people and an editor. So there's a director, producer, and me, making sure the stream's all okay and things and doing some various other bits as well, and then an editor who is clipping out. So there's only a team of 4.
Which is incredibly small for this type of show.
For the amount that's actually going on. But in terms of the graphics, we then bring that in from a computer using a Ultra Studio, and that just gives a key and a fill, and we put that into an ATEM, into the ATEM, and use a DSK to bring that on air. And then the great thing about that is our director doesn't have to worry about triggering graphics or making sure that anything's on air. The producer just has the full cloud system on his laptop and can trigger stuff in real time. And that can technically be done anywhere in the world. So I know on another project we use the same cloud system. So for the FA on the World Cup, it was an interesting project because the biggest restriction with that was the amount of people that we could send to Russia. And so we could actually only send a crew of 2 and a presenter. But we had to do a daily live show from Russia, which, as you can imagine, is quite hard. So what we ended up doing is sending a crew of 2, and there was 1 camera guy and 1 producer, and then the presenter. But we produced the whole show back in the UK via cloud vision mixing and cloud graphics and cloud communication. If you want to go and check that out, it's called The Lion's Den on the England YouTube channel. It was throughout the World Cup, and we've continued doing it since as well for various England matches, and it was great.
I mean, it's pretty much pushing the boundaries really as to what's possible, especially with that sort of size of team. I think when we spoke on the phone previously, you mentioned that you were literally sat here in the UK almost directing and vision mixing this show remotely from Russia. So
it was all done on my laptop from my home at that time, and that's kind of the beauty of this, the way that things are going with the cloud as well. There's always somewhat reliability issues, and it scares the hell out of me using doing it this way, but in this case it was the only way that it worked. But we were all connected up via comms. There was a team of about 3 or 4 in Wembley whenever we were going live. There was me sat at home directing, and then I could also talk in real time to the guys who were in Russia. And it was a hotel room in Russia that we were producing. We turned into a studio and produced the show from. But it was amazing. Like every day we'd have Gareth pop in for a chat or a player pop in for a chat. And I got to give massive credit to the FA when they kind of approached me with the idea. They just said, this show is about engaging fans with the team, because there was a real sort of, I won't say there's a real disconnect, but certainly before the World Cup, it wasn't as strong as the connection was after the World Cup. And I'm sure the football had something to do with that, but we'd like to claim that it was us. Because we were allowing fans at home to go and FaceTime their favourite England player the day before they then went out and played a match. Or we were putting real-time questions for those watching on YouTube. They were able to ask their question to Gareth Southgate live. And it was all about allowing the fans at home to interact in real time with their favourite players and their favourite team.
And just to get a bit of insight into the kit that you used to enable you to do that, what was your general setup for that?
It was basic, really basic, because again, not only was there a restriction on how many people we could take to Russia, there was a restriction on cases and kit. So I think the guys were able to take two cameras, in which we actually only used really one as live. The other one was there as a backup and to film VTs. So it's a one camera setup. Everything was being plugged into one MacBook Pro using Wirecast on that MacBook Pro, and they were then sending that feed to me on a Cloud Vision mixing software, a great piece of software called Grabio, which was originally meant for clipping, but they've just released this product called Grabio Producer, which is a Cloud Vision mixer. And from there, I was able to bring in VTs and various other graphics and aspects as well. We did some very clever stuff with the live chat, where we pulled the live YouTube chat, and we had a producer pulling that in real time, and then we were then able to create on-screen graphics using that live YouTube chat, but also give it to the presenter on an iPad. So people watching at home were able to ask questions, and within 10 seconds of them asking that question, we had a graphic prepared and ready to bring it on screen, but the presenter also had it on an iPad to be able to read it. And we had someone filtering which comments and questions we wanted on screen.
Yeah.
So everything, as I say, was done in the cloud, but the kit that was actually on the ground had to be
super lean.
Yes, super lean, because we were just so restricted by that.
In terms of the kit setup for the kickoff, obviously the team that you've got, not so lean, but the team that you've got is relatively small for the amount of stuff that you have going on. Is everything networked together, or you said, kind of touched upon it before, where you're almost hot desking? One can pick up someone else's role on their laptop if they want to. How is that all connected together?
It might sound basic, but literally everything is just plugged in over Ethernet to a router. So everything, we've got full wireless capabilities on there. So if you want to control anything in the studio via an iPad, you can. So the lighting is all controlled via an iPad app. The sound is all controlled via an iPad app. And again, we have various accessibility as well to vision mix the show via Wi-Fi and iPad. But most of the time we're using Macs. Yeah. The other things we do is we use third-party like gadgets. So there's a great thing called the Elgato Stream Deck, and we basically, for anyone that doesn't know, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's basically 15 programmable buttons, and you just plug it in USB to a computer. And we saw this and we were like, we can do something with this. And think of it as macros and hotkeys, and it's just massively sped up our work process. So we have one button that will instantly trigger all of our hyperdecks to record. Now we record also ISOs of every camera. So if you can imagine, we've just got a rack of Blackmagic hyperdecks filled with SD cards. And traditionally, someone would have to go and hit every record button, because there's no real easy way to trigger every single one at the same time through the Blackmagic software. So we've done a lot of call it hacky stuff, but let's use the proper word.
Customization. That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
To really speed up the workflows and things like that, we've got time code noting software, so that when a moment happens on the show, we hit a button and it notes the time code of that, but also then tells us what the time code of the YouTube video is, so that we can go back and give that to the crew, and they can look through and pick out the best moments. Because what we're very quickly understanding from a content point of view and a strategic point of view is the clips are just as important as the live.
When you say clips, you mean sort of the shorter condensed version of the show that you push out after?
We'll kind of look at, there's a couple of different strategies with the clips. So firstly, we use, and I mentioned in the beginning, Grabio for real-time clipping. So we're pumping our TMP feed into them, and that allows us to get a live editor where we can select in points and out points, and then just export the clip and post it straight to social. So if you actually watch the live show, a goal will go in, you'll have this amazing celebration on the show, and it's usually within 30 seconds to a minute, the clip of that will be out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. And we really see that as a benefit of bringing in an audience or bringing back an audience to the live show, because I think a lot of, especially with traditional media and TV, is a lot of the mistakes made is that they try and produce a TV show for social when doing live. So, you know, you'll format it like a TV show, but forget that online is a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
You know, it's this constant revolving door of people coming and leaving. When you sit down to watch the TV, you sit down to watch the TV, and you've allocated yourself that time. When you watch a YouTube live stream, you're very often watching it on your mobile device, where every 5 seconds you're getting a WhatsApp notification or a tweet notification, and there's just so many distractions. And so our strategy is, we don't mind you being distracted and going away, but how can we pull you back in if you are? And so using those clips, when you have left the broadcast and you're scrolling back through Twitter, you see one of those clips, and those clips are instantly clickable that bring you back to the live stream. So we're always finding ways of, if you do leave us, you're going to come back.
Yeah.
So that's one strategy that we do, and then also we do longer form clips as well. So it's all about how can we keep the ecosystem going, so that we know the live show is, let's say it goes out on a Saturday and Sunday. We know that in the live show we need to have 4 or 5 talking points that we can clip out as 10 to 15 minute videos that then feeds the channel for the next 4 or 5 days until the next live show. So yeah, there's a lot of thought. It can also on the, you know, it can look just like we're doing a 2-3 hour live stream once a week, but there's actually a lot of thought that goes into it about how we feed the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. And before each of these live shows, obviously, given the nature of football and the fighting matches that you cover, they can generally be quite long, these streams.
Yeah.
How much technical prep goes in before each show?
We've worked out we've got it to a T where we can turn up to the studio around about an hour before we go live. Don't worry, we never do that. But we know we can if we need to. There's been times where the guys will say, you know, can we film something? And we'll just rock up, and we've got the ability to turn everything on, film it, and then go. So there really isn't. We've built the studio, so there really isn't that much setup. What we end up doing is usually arriving at the studio 3 to 4 hours before, and just having a really relaxed setup. Because I mentioned, and you saw there, it's a flat. So when we're not filming, everything has to be packed down and out of the way. Someone lives there. Yeah. So all the cameras can't stay out. All the wires have to be taken down. So there is that 1 hour setup time to get everything plugged in and going, which is pretty, you know, when it takes about 45 minutes to actually get everything physically placed there and plugged in. Yeah. The actual kind of switching on and restoring the settings only takes 15 minutes, and then we're ready to roll. But yeah, we'll arrive 3 to 4 hours before. We'll work out roughly what talking points we want to hit on the show. We'll look at, sometimes we just feel like changing the color balance and things like that of the cameras and giving it a different look. It's amazing because being on YouTube and working for someone who is always pushing the boundaries, we're able to experiment. We're able to experiment with a lot of things, and that's also one of the great things, and often the double-edged sword of YouTube, is that the comments will tell you if you've got it right or not. You know, the audience are extremely vocal online, and if they don't like something, they're going to tell you, but also if they do like something, that they're going to tell you as well. And I think the best example I can give of that is going back to the FA on the World Cup. When we first started doing these live shows, we actually, before we went to Russia, we did a few test live shows from Wembley for some games. And our presenter, Craig Mitch, is a fantastic interactive presenter, but when he first started doing it, the comments to say they weren't positive is an understatement. They were tough. Like, it was a really tough crowd. And I think there was a point where the FA could have gone, this guy just isn't gelling with the audience. But they, quite rightfully so, stuck with him. And to give Craig his credit, I think he used the comments to work out what they were liking, what they weren't liking, what he needed to change. And he did that throughout the series. And if you go back now and you look at some of the last episodes, or really like the last 10 episodes of The Lion's Den, there is nothing but love for him. He was able to completely tailor his personality and the way that he was presenting. And we were able to tailor our technicals and the way that we were structuring the show to transform a show that in the beginning on the first three shows didn't have great sentiment into something that has now pretty much forced the FA to continue doing it. Because if we don't, we get more comments of like, bring back Lions Den, bring back Lions Den. For every match, any of the pre-recorded stuff will always have a comment of, is there going to be a Lions Den for this match? And that's great.
Well, that's exactly what you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really all about driving audience engagement. I mean, I've seen some clips of your show from the first season when we're talking about the kickoff to what it is now. And even when you go on YouTube and you watch the recorded shows, you can still see all of the live chat. And that chat feed is so full. Can you explain a bit about your, the way in which you try to drive that engagement over the course of these 3 seasons?
Yeah. The chat's an interesting one because, you can have very positive sentiment, you can have very negative sentiment. We're lucky because we do this on True Geordie's channel. Most of the sentiment is positive towards him, they're his fans and things like that. But we've actually built a huge sporting and football audience off the back of it as well. When we first started, we were quite heavy with Twitter. So at any one time we have an iPad connected and the studio can bring up tweets and things like that, so we can visualize stuff. And we tried to gamify it at the start by having Photoshop competitions for the audience, and they would send in real time these things and win a PlayStation. And it worked. It was great, but whether it was viable or not, I'm not sure. It definitely generated quite a lot of buzz on Twitter. But what we've done more recently is YouTube have a great feature called Super Chat. We were struggling, basically, we had an issue where we were just getting so many comments on the live chat that we weren't really being able to use them, and we just ended up ignoring them. And although we were still able to create a great show, I felt that we were slipping down into that TV route where we're just creating a show, and we weren't creating something that was built for the platform in the interactivity. And my thing, I come from a background of like Periscope and apps like that, where the interactivity is key. Like, your audience are key, and interacting with them is key. So what we've done is we've started utilizing Super Chat, which has been amazing for us, because it enables Super Chat, for anyone that doesn't know, is a YouTube feature that allows your audience to pay to have their comment highlighted. So and they can choose how much they want to pay, and the more they pay, the more it stays on screen, and the bolder it gets, so that the likelihood is the broadcaster sees it. And we utilize that and basically feature these super chats into the show. We can't feature every single one because you've seen the chat. We get a lot of these super chats, despite the fact
it's
that people
surprising how many people are willing to pay for the comment to be.
We make good AdSense money, but we make more on super chat now. So it's surprising how many people are willing to pay for a comment to be read out. But yeah, we don't read everyone. But what we find is when people are willing to pay for their comment, they don't just write "you suck," or something. They actually write something that is of intelligence and is of use. So we found that since turning on that feature, we actually get great questions and great comments for the guests, and they turn into talking topics and points for the thing. So now when a super chat comes in, we're throwing that on a screen for the audience to see, and they're reading maybe like 20, 30 per show, and they're generating great topics of conversation. And we also know that it's what the viewers want to hear, because they're the ones asking to hear it.
Yeah. Perfect. So if you join me in a round of applause, we'll close the session.
Thank you.
Cheers.